Hello and welcome to the gallery. This time we're painting up the Darkoath Ravagers.
Warcry.
We're still working our way through Warcry Red Harvest, and I've painted up the terrain and I've assembled everything. So this time around, let's paint up the Darkoath Ravagers, because they look freaking awesome. And we're gonna start with some skin tones. I start with a zenithal undercoat for the entire model, and then we're using Darkoath flesh and Guilliman flesh mixed with a little bit of contrast medium, just so we can control it a bit better. If you want some more shadows, you can add more of the main color into the shadows, so it will give it a little bit deeper tone, but mostly I'm just brushing it over the zenithal and it'll look rather nice. Like I said, the witch gets a lighter tone. There we're using Guilliman flesh mixed with some more contrast medium because we want that old disheveled look. We're also adding this color to the dark elf hats that the main guy is holding because they look pale and dead. Next we're gonna start working on some leather and cloth and fur. We're using snakebite leather and basilicanum grey for the fur. A little bit of grey for the fur to get it some extra contrast look, not contrast paint in this case when I'm talking about contrast, but some depth in the color. All the base coats on these minis I'm using contrast paints except for the metallics, and I use them because over the zenithal it is a strong look and you can get a lot done with simple methods. Just be careful where you're brushing it, because if you put one type of contrast paint over another, more often than not, it won't look that good. But we're getting down the base coat and the shading and hints of a highlight here and there with this method. Now all the models have leather bits on it, mostly boots, straps, something to that effect, and most of them have fur here and there. For the witch, we're also putting it on the batwing because it's a similar enough thing and it won't look out of place once the rest around it is done in different paints, like the horns and the skulls and everything. Now we're entering the clothing. We're using two types of green, Militarum green and Creed camo, and for basically I'm mixing it up where I'm putting the stuff. I'm using the lighter, more natural green on all the cloth, except for her cloak, because we want her to stand out a little bit more than the rest of the group, so we're using a darker green on the cloak. And that's basically the only reason why I'm putting it there. We want her to look different from the rest of the group, because she is quite different. I mean, in my head, they're all this one big giant family, and she is the matriarch of this renegade, psychotic murder frenzy mafia. And as you can see, a little bit of contrast paint, especially the green over this zenithal, looks pretty damn good. We're not going to fiddle with that too much later on because we're getting a quite an okay look quite early. For the wood, it's just Sigor brown. It's quite a dark contrast paint, so sometimes it'll be even darker. The zenithal won't really show too much. Now, like I said, I'm having it as an entire family, so we're giving them all the same hair color, just bright orange hair color, because everything is muted, everything is quite natural, so this bright little bit on the top looks good. And some of them have skulls on the base, which I put there, granted, and some of them have bones on them here and there, so skeletal horde, and you're pretty much good with the bones. Of course, you can highlight it up or something like that, or have it different. You could have burnt skulls or something like that, because it's on more of a burnt field, the Red Harvest set. But I like it just simple and easy, because I want to play with these guys, and I'm not gonna spend weeks and weeks to paint them to some display fashion. I just want to get them on the board. For the metallics, I'm using only 2 colors. It's silver from Vallejo and retributed armor for Citadel. I find that they go down the best. The silver, I love this silver. It's a bit bright, so we will have to darken that down quite a lot unless we want really, really shiny stuff. And the retributed gold, it's a more warm gold, so it contrasts well with the silver. And it's basically just pick what you want to be silver, what you want to be gold. I'm going for more silver with gold trims here and there, but whatever you want to do, it's of course your choice. And that basically is going to mean that the models are almost ready for the table. You don't have to do much more to get them to look good, but you can always add something here and there. Finding all the little bits that needs a little bit of gold here and there, it makes for a much better mini in the end, in my opinion at least. Now we could leave off at this point, but I want to have them looking a little bit better, so I'm going to add a few extra steps, just a little bit of tidbits here and there, just to give them a little bit of extra flair. And while I'm painting that up, you could always hit all those small little buttons underneath the screen with the like and the subscribe and the bell and everything, and by all means share it and comment hoo-ha if you want to. So now we're gonna get them to look a little bit more real. I mean, they look okay, but we want them more real. I'm starting out with my usual metallic mixture, which is 50-50 Basilicanum Grey and Contrast Medium. I actually have just a separate pot with that. Once my Basilicanum Grey got a little bit low, I just add a Contrast Medium, and I just keep that to the side, and I use it for a lot of my metallics because it's a nicer tone than Nuln Oil, in my opinion, and you can just add another layer or something like that to get a look that you like. I find it a bit more fun to use than the Nuln Oil. Now, after we've darkened down the metallics a bit, let's start with some highlights. And of course, we're going to start with the skin tones, and that's basically just flayed one flesh, watered down on my wet palette, and I'm just finding the ridges and stuff like that on top of the muscles, mainly in the face and on the more prominent muscles, just to get a little bit extra highlight going on the models. And we're just dragging it down to where the brightest highlight is, because where you lift the brush, that's where the brightest highlight is going to be. We're doing the same thing with most of the cloth. We're just using a few green colors just to get some good extra highlight going. Ochre and camo for the cloth, and for the witch's cloak we're using Warpstone Glow because it's a bit darker of a color, so it fits better with the darker green that's going on there. And we're looking for edges and maybe the highest points of the folds and stuff like that, just to get some extra look going there. And as you can see, this is a much greener color, and that makes her stand out even more as a special character, because she is quite different from the rest of the group, especially in gameplay, because she's a witch. The others famously are not. So after that, we're gonna do a little bit of highlights for the furs. You could dry brush this fairly easily, but I decided to use the side of my brush instead and just get some crisp highlights just on the tops of everything. Nothing dry brushing over everything. It might be quicker, might be simpler, but it wasn't the way I was going to go. We're going for a little bit more control than the dry brush can give, and so we're just grabbing the top of every ridge with the side of the brush, not using the tip that much, and it will give it some greater highlight, and you can focus it more where it is, because we have the zenithal underneath. That means we don't want to lose control with the dry brush at this point, which of course you don't have to. You can always keep control even though you're dry brushing. A little bit of bone white to highlight the skulls and the bones, and it's quick to use. I mean, the bone white from Vallejo, however, is quite thin to begin with, in my opinion, but I like it still because it's the boniest of the bone colors I've found so far. Now we have to paint some eyes. She has the biggest one, so let's start with that. We're just putting white on the eye, and then we're just going to paint the pupil with a little bit of blue color, because blue is the only bit that we're going to use. Blue is for the magical part on it. We're going to use it for the eyes and for the runes that they have carved in themselves and on their medallions and stuff like that. So we're putting white down first to get a cleaner undertone, and then with watered down turquoise and the other blue color that I used. It was up there on the video a few months ago. We're gonna get some extra color going. And I have a special thing. I have painted many of Darkoath characters before, and I have them with these blue tribal warrior tattoos. Don't know why, I just feel like it's a cool look. It's some sort of Bravehearty type thing, but more Pictish, Celtish type thing that I'm going for in this case. And just a little bit of dark blue and then a little bit of light blue inside it. Gives us this ethereal, spiritualistic, barbaric look to it that I really like. I mean, it's quite different because they're all muted, but these pull it up a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting in my opinion. And now the pupil of the little eye, it's just a little bit of dark blue and then a little bit of lighter blue and then some highlights here and there. Now we're starting to add into all those little crevices some really thinned out blue paint so it'll look good. As you can see, the light changed a little bit because I've been using glasses, because I was painting the eyes and the glasses have lights on them, so fancy. Now we're going to dry brush. We're going to dry brush the metallics because I didn't feel like using the regular brush for it. And then we're going to add a hell of a lot of blood for it because of course we're not going to add blood. These guys need blood. Afterwards, it's just basically finishing off the bases, and you can find the entire video on how I did the bases for this warband in this video linked here in the corner. It's a short video and it's a fun base to do, so I definitely recommend checking that out. Now, after I finish these off, I'm gonna start on the next one, the last warband that I'm gonna paint in a little while, because there are new videos on the horizon, especially with Chaos Knights coming and stuff like that, so I'm quite excited about that. But definitely tell me what warband you would like me to paint next. And here we have the Darkoath Ravagers. I like this look, I find it quite striking. It's muted colors with bright extra highlights going in there. A little bit of orange, some blue, and of course quite a lot of red blood going around. It's a striking look in my opinion. Thank you very much for joining me here today. There are links in the description for all kinds of stuff. Social media and various tidbits. You do with it what you will. Like, share and subscribe and hit that little bell thing while you're doing it. And let the colors flow. But until next time, farewell.